one of the real experts in understanding how new software companies work and how old software companies try to work with those companies. Mitch Kertzman of Hummer Winblad, you've invested in a lot of these companies. You've run some of the biggest software companies in the world. This is an interesting deal, this SAP acquiring SuccessFactors, because it really is among the oldest in the database companies acquiring one of the newest in the cloud-based companies. What do you make of a deal like this?
Well, I think it was necessary for SAP. I mean, the cloud companies, the software as a service companies really are coming up to threaten the established companies. So you see Oracle buying RightNow recently. You see SAP doing SuccessFactors. And it's a defensive move partly against companies like a NetSuite, which has been doing very well, or a Workday. Dave Duffield, the founder of PeopleSoft, has a company called Workday, which is a very hot company.
With Anil Bhusri.
Yes.
Who is, well, all right, let's just stop right there. Let's talk about that, because that's a very interesting company, specifically as it relates to SuccessFactors. I've heard, and there's been talked about in other conference calls, that SuccessFactors is losing business to Workday. Workday is an HR software company founded by the guys that made the biggest company ever in HR, which is Dave Duffield and Anil Bhusri from PeopleSoft. Do you see this as SAP trying to get ahead of Workday?
I do. I do think that SAP certainly knows that Workday is out there, and I think SAP is going to be scrambling as fast as it can. SAP's secular growth hasn't been all that spectacular. They bought Sybase recently, which is the company I used to run, and now you see this large acquisition. And so partly it's getting some more growth in the business, partly it's getting some more modern technology in the business. The core SAP product is getting a little long in the tooth. But I think it's a good move for SAP, but a necessary move for SAP, and it certainly won't be the last of these that they'll do.
Well, the SuccessFactors guys are obviously thrilled. When you invest in startup businesses...
Lars looks pretty thrilled on your show earlier.
He's going after my brother as a former short seller. That comment hurt a little bit. Do you see the companies you invest in trying to get this kind of takeout? You know, we're talking about the Zynga IPO on the show today, but this kind of takeout is much more, happens more often.
Well, obviously, this kind of acquisition is a twofer in the sense that it's an IPO plus an acquisition at a premium. My company I founded, PowerSoft, was that way. We went public. We were acquired by Sybase.
But a lot of the venture investors were still in SuccessFactors.
Yes, that's right. And so, it was a great for them. Startup companies, we invest only at the early stage. So these kinds of valuations are probably dreams in the eyes of our entrepreneurs. And you know, being a public company is a hard thing to be. It's expensive, it's challenging, and so a lot of companies kind of like the idea of getting acquired at a significant premium ahead of having to deal with all that. Although clearly, once you get into the public world, the numbers are a lot bigger.
Yeah. Now, when I looked at this deal, one of the things that's really interesting to me is the cloud base. I mentioned it briefly to Bill. He didn't really take the bait, the SAP CEO. But the idea that there's a really big, really near-term opportunity in the cloud, and that be the U.S. federal government saying as much as $20 billion of spending will be pushed to the cloud, should happen in the cloud, and that IT managers in the federal government should look to the cloud first. It's called cloud first. Do you see this as the kind of thing that big software companies do, is say, we could have taken a couple years to build it, but this is urgent, we got to buy it?
I don't know that would have been that big a factor. By the way, the government was pushing open source long before most for the same reason, to reduce cost. And so I think it's a great thing as a citizen that the government is doing stuff like this. Interestingly, as an early stage venture investor, if a company came in and said that their focus was going to be on the federal government market, we probably wouldn't invest, because when I hear that, I hear sclerotic decision making, and you know, so I'm. As an early stage investor, I'd be cautious about that. But I'll guarantee you, when I was at Sybase, we were doing a lot of business with the federal government, particularly the intelligence community. I'll guarantee you Oracle and SAP are doing a huge amount of business
Oracle
there.
started to work with the intelligence community. It was his first big customer, right?
Yeah. So I think it's an important market for a large company, but it's a very difficult market for a small company.
It's also interesting, this whole movement of the cloud and the government being there to adapt that, and we will talk about that another day. Okay. Mitch Kertzman, always glad to have you on the show.
Thanks, Cory. Good to see you.